If there is someone who once stood beside you through every storm, listened without judgment, and lifted you when you could not lift yourself, yet one day they grow silent and step away. No accusations, no arguments. Ask yourself, is this just a passing quiet, or is it a sign that something in this relationship has been neglected for far too long? Stay with Conscious Path, because the journey ahead will uncover the hidden chambers of your mind and heart, the places you may have never dared to touch. Yet it is there that truth and healing quietly await. There are encounters that seem to happen outside the flow of time, when two souls enter the same room, and instantly, without a single word, an invisible world opens. The first soul, a super empath, carries within them the rare ability to see through the mask, to reach into the places even their owner fears to tread. The other, an avoidant, has spent a lifetime building walls, locking every door that leads to the heart, believing that distance is the safest shelter. At first, avoidance can look like strength. Mystery and untouchability create a fragile yet intoxicating power, the power to dictate the emotional rhythm. They retreat and others pursue. They grow silent and others rush to fill the gap. But what the avoidant ego does not foresee is meeting an entirely different archetype. Someone who can love deeply without clinging, wait patiently without waiting forever, and see the darkness without being consumed by it. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And here, the encounter becomes a dangerous mirror. The super empath, through quiet presence and steadfast endurance, begins to reflect back every empty space, every fracture in the avoidant's inner structure. No criticism, no heated arguments, only a stillness, complete and unwavering, that the avoidant has never learned to face. Gradually, the old rhythm dissolves. For the first time, the avoidant is no longer able to follow the familiar script where they control every distance. The super empath no longer steps forward when they step back. No more questions like, "Are we okay?" to soothe their unease. No warmth left to cushion the emptiness they use to avoid the truth. Instead, they must stand before that emptiness, cold, bare, and without comfort. And there, deep in the unconscious, something begins to crack. The once impenetrable wall now echoes with the sound of silence, the voice of a shadow long left untouched. This is the beginning of dissolution, not through attack, but through a serene withdrawal that dismantles every illusion of control. The avoidant begins to sense instability, but not in the way they know. Normally, when the other person pulls away, they extend the gap until the other can't bear it and returns. But this time, the gap remains. The silence holds, and it is not a tense silence waiting to explode. It is an ordered silence, as though the super empath has found a different air to breathe, a space no longer revolving around their rhythm. In Jungian psychology, this is when the shadow awakens. The shadow is not just the negative traits we repress, it is also the power, the feelings we have long disowned. Avoidance buried deep the fear of being hurt, the belief that intimacy will end in loss, into this unconscious realm. But when the shield of the other is gone, they are forced to face it, bare, without filter. The super empath doesn't need to say, "I see you pulling away." They simply reflect back exactly what they receive. When the avoidant is silent, they are silent. When distance widens, they don't step in to close it, not to punish, but to let the truth reveal itself without distortion. This is a form of shadow work, allowing the other to see themselves, to recognize the void they've been avoiding for years. This change shakes the very structure of power the avoidant relies on. In the past, they felt safe, knowing that no matter how many times they shut the door, there would always be a patient hand knocking. Now, the door remains closed, but the knocking has stopped. And in that stillness, a question begins to echo in their mind. Have I lost something? Or did I never truly have it? When that question takes root, the ego begins to tremble. For the avoidance ego has always been fed by controlling the distance. But now, that control has been gently and irreversibly removed. This is the true beginning of confrontation. No more games, no more scripts. Only the raw truth between two souls. One learning to stand fully in their own light, without needing to be saved. In the early days of this shift, the avoidant often feels more confused than afraid. They cannot understand why the energy that once flowed toward them has now gone quiet. They try a few of their old strategies, remaining silent for longer, creating even more distance. But unexpectedly, the gap is never closed. What once brought them a sense of power now becomes a mirror reflecting the emptiness inside. Carl Jung often emphasized that what we refuse to accept in ourselves will return to us as fate. For the avoidant, that fate is the loneliness they have unconsciously created. The super empath is no longer the one soothing them, no longer the emotional cushion shielding them from this truth. They have withdrawn their warmth, not out of revenge, but out of respect for themselves. In that withdrawal, the super empath steps into a new form of strength, the strength of non-interference. They understand that true love does not mean carrying the full weight of another's emotions, nor constantly trying to calm every fear. They begin holding their energy for themselves, no longer centering their life around a heart that remains closed. This is not expressed through grand declarations, but through the quiet act of ceasing to do all the things that once sustained the old cycle. The avoidant may now feel unsettled, even angry. In the past, they were accustomed to having their emotions regulated by the other's patience and warmth. Now, without that, their insecurities are exposed like long buried sediment eroded away. This is a crucial moment, because if they have the courage to face that shadow, healing can begin. But if they turn away, the emptiness only deepens. The super empath, on the other side, is not being cruel. They have simply learned that holding on to an unbalanced relationship means abandoning themselves. And in the world of deep souls, that is something that cannot be sustained forever. Eventually, the silence is no longer just an unconscious tactic between two people. It becomes a living reality. The avoidant begins to feel the invisible pressure of that gap. There are no more morning check-in messages, no warm voice initiating profound conversations, and most of all, no assurance that, no matter how many times they retreat, someone will still be there waiting. Jung called this the dissolution of the ego's illusion. The avoidance ego, built upon intricate layers of defense, the belief that they control the rhythm, that they have the right to dictate distance, begins to collapse. When the super empath no longer steps into that space, that power evaporates, revealing an uncomfortable truth. They were never leading. They were only running away. The super empath does not look at this emptiness with satisfaction. They look with the eyes of someone who once understood pain, but has now chosen not to carry it for someone else. They see that compassion becomes self-destruction when it erases boundaries. And through their calm withdrawal, they send a wordless message. I will no longer walk through the door you always keep closed. The avoidant, once accustomed to endless patience, begins to experience a different kind of loss. This is not loss wrapped in arguments or accusations. It is a subtle yet profound absence, where the image of the other person fades from their life, not because the love has died, but because that love has been redirected back to its rightful place, the giver. In the depths of the unconscious, this is the moment when both of their psychological maps shift. The super empath begins to reclaim the inner landscapes they once abandoned to care for another. The avoidant stands at a crossroads, remain within their fortress, or step out, perhaps for the first time, to learn how to approach a heart without fear of being consumed. This transition does not roar. It seeps into the smallest moments, the seemingly insignificant details. The avoidant notices they have begun waiting for signals from the super empath, a message, a glance, a caring word, but they do not come. And it is this absence that echoes louder than any reproach. In Jung's framework, this is a deeper stage of facing the shadow. The shadow is not only the parts of the self that there is a strange moment when the truth no longer knocks at the door, but stands directly before you, silent, waiting to be seen. The avoidant can feel it as an invisible pressure, a weight they once always found ways to distract from or conceal. No one is there anymore to translate their emotions into gentler words. No one patiently resumes the conversation when they leave it unfinished. And most importantly, no one is carrying the emotional responsibility they had grown so accustomed to placing on someone else. Carl Jung once said that the shadow reveals itself when the light withdraws. Through a quiet yet resolute act, the super empath has taken that light back for themselves. They are no longer the mediator, no longer turning someone else's pain into a personal duty. Instead, they step aside, leaving the avoidant face to face with what they have been running from, the fragility of their own being. On the other side, the super empath enters a new territory of freedom. They begin to rediscover relationships, activities, and dreams they had long abandoned. They learn to direct love toward themselves with the same devotion they once gave to others, and in doing so, they shine more brightly, not to prove a point, but simply because they are no longer drained by an imbalanced relationship. If the avoidant is perceptive enough, they will feel that this distance is different. It is not passive or indifferent distance. It is a wordless declaration, I will no longer play this game. For an ego that has lived on the illusion of control, this is a profound shock. They realize that their power never truly existed. It was only permission that the other has now revoked. And as with every journey through the shadow, this turning point can lead to two paths. Either they continue building higher walls and lose a precious connection, or they dare to dismantle their defenses and learn how to step into the light. This choice, though painful, is the only chance to experience a kind of love they have only ever watched from a distance. This change is like the tide pulling far out, slow, quiet, yet revealing what has long been hidden beneath the surface. The avoidant stands on the exposed shore, realizing they are no longer surrounded by the warm waters of patience and understanding. Instead, there is dry sand where every footprint and every crack is laid bare. For the first time, they see the full landscape of themselves, not through the soothing lens of another. In Jung's analysis, this is the stage of undistorted reflection, when the image from the outside is no longer softened to protect the ego. By ceasing all efforts to compensate, the super empath has returned to the avoidant a mirror so honest it is uncomfortable. No blame, no demand for change, only the exact reflection of the energy they have put out. And it is precisely this that dismantles the unconscious power structure the avoidant clings to. The super empath has no need to play the role of the victor. They are not seeking recognition or revenge. They simply step out of the loop, holding on to their dignity and peace. They understand that love is not the sacrifice of self to maintain closeness, and that self-respect is the foundation of any lasting bond. For the avoidant, the hardest part is not the departure itself, but the way it happens. Quiet, without drama, without tearful goodbyes. It is simply that a once familiar presence has disappeared from their orbit. That absence feels like a physical gap in the room, an empty chair at the table. But more deeply, it is a silence in the soul that they do not know how to fill. If they pause long enough to listen, this silence can become a doorway. It opens the possibility for self-inquiry. Why am I so afraid of closeness? What am I protecting? And what have I lost because of these walls? But if they turn away, they will continue the same cycle, repeating the same emptiness with new faces. As for the super empath, they have crossed the threshold within themselves, leaving behind the role of savior to become the guardian of their own wholeness. And from that moment on, their journey no longer revolves around the avoidant, but is directed toward the very light they have been seeking all along. When silence has become the shared language, it begins to speak more than any words ever could. The avoidant feels a strange kind of emptiness, unlike the solitude they once chose. This is reflective loneliness, the kind that comes when you realize you have dismantled the only bridge leading to another's heart. And now, even if you want to return, that path has been overgrown with the weeds of time and distance. Jung once emphasized that every meaningful encounter is an opportunity to meet ourselves again. Through a deliberate and conscious withdrawal, the super empath has turned this relationship into a summoning point of the unconscious. It calls the avoidant back to the part of their soul they had abandoned, the part that knows how to long, how to love, but also how to tremble at the risk of loss. This is the truth many avoidants fear most. To be loved, they must accept the possibility of being hurt. The super empath does not demand an apology. They do not construct a drama to force the other to admit fault. They simply step into a space where they no longer have to wait or persuade anyone to walk alongside them. And in doing so, they free themselves from the emotional vortex, while unintentionally dismantling the psychological scaffolding the avoidant has used to uphold their ego. The absence left behind is not merely the lack of a person, it is the loss of a stable energy source, an unconditional anchor. The avoidant, long accustomed to leaning on that to keep balance in the relationship, must now face the truth that they alone are responsible for their own equilibrium. This is a daunting task, for it requires them to step into the territory they have always avoided, the realm of sincerity, vulnerability, and emotional accountability. For the super empath, this is neither victory nor defeat. It is the affirmation that compassion does not mean limitless sacrifice. They understand that refusing to abandon themselves is the purest form of love. And the paradox is that this very decision, loving themselves enough to walk away, becomes the most profound blow to the avoidance ego, forcing it to confront the raw truth it has avoided all its life. And if you see yourself somewhere in this story, whether as the one with the open heart or the one who has built walls, remember this: every encounter is an opportunity for us to grow. Do not fear the shadow within. It is simply the part of you waiting to be seen, to be loved, and to be healed. If today's message resonates with you, let it be a reminder that you are worthy of a love that never requires you to lose yourself. And once you understand this, you will not only find peace, you will find your way back to your own soul. Thank you for listening. If you wish to continue this journey into the depths of psychology, along with stories that carry the power to transform, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because perhaps just one more story could be the missing piece that changes your entire life.